Hello and welcome to the Dentro Talent Podcast. I have Neil Holden with me today. Neil is previously CIO, but also founder of Ignite AI Partners. Neil, great to have you with us today. We are going to be talking all things AI, but mainly around kind of AI adoption for businesses. Before we go into all of that, if you could just give me a bit of a rundown of how this all came to be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so until last year, in fact, it was just over a year ago now, I was working in retail. I was CIO at Halfords for 7 years. A long history in retail, so I think I'm older than I look, or maybe not. I spent 27 years in retail, started at 16, straight out of school. I worked for big UK retailers that everyone will have heard of: Clark Shoes, Argos, Homebase, New Look, Jones Bootmaker. Then ended up at Halfords. And during my time throughout that career, I've seen lots of digital transformations and technological advancements, but honestly, nothing like AI. And I know it's not new necessarily, but clearly around 2022-ish with ChatGPT and the generative AI kind of boom, that convergence of all of those different technologies, machine learning, generative AI, LLMs, cloud computing, all seem to crescendo into what we're experiencing today. And we were investing in that at Halfords, and I was really interested. And to cut a long story short, decided that it was such an opportunity to go and help other businesses that I should end my 27-year career in retail and do what we're doing today. So we're just over a year old now at Ignite AI Partners. I co-founded the business with Craig Bentley, I'm the co-founder, and we built a team of 11 people, growing client base, and trying to navigate the tsunami that is AI for businesses and help them along the way.
Yeah, and I think tsunami is a really good word to use, because I think if you operate in technology or you're involved in the technology world somewhere along the line, you are getting bombarded left, right, and center of AI does this, AI does that, AI is going to do this, AI can do that, and there is a lot of noise, and this podcast was born out of somebody commenting on my LinkedIn saying it would be great to have kind of real life uses of AI. So when we started talking about this podcast, I thought it would only be fair for AI to give me a bit of a question bank and give me some ideas, because who am I to say what we should be talking about? And the first question it popped up was, how have you seen AI adoption change in businesses over the years? Now, obviously, it's a brief period, but realistically, what are you now seeing, and what are the trends that you're identifying?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's actually not a brief period in reality, because AI or variations of AI have been used in business for many years, machine learning being one of them. And if we can get into a hypothetical debate about whether that's real AI or not, and I do with people reasonably regularly, but the basis of AI has been around for a long time. As I just said, the real differences in generative AI started to come to the forefront. But it's that convergence of all of those surrounding technologies that, when they're combined together, gives you this real superpower. And the difference now, with instead of looking at things individually and looking at things like machine learning and predictive analytics and data, big data, and those sorts of things, looking at them individually, we now seem to have this utility, more like electricity, where all of those things are combined, that then infiltrates its way through systems that businesses already use, new and emerging technologies that are AI native. That's the big difference for me. And now where businesses are going, oh, hang on a minute, I need to understand what I need to do with this and take advantage of it ultimately. Over the last few years, that's really what we're talking about. The main shift has been from more curiosity to commitment. So there are lots of buzzwords, and businesses, don't forget, businesses are change fatigued. If you're a retailer, your focus is on your customers and your colleagues and stock and cost and all the traditional things that retailers have always been concerned about and always will be, not AI. So when the generative AI boom happened, I think lots of businesses were, it's another thing that we've got to try and think about and deal with. And, as an ex-CIO, I was getting all excited and bringing ideas to the board table. And I think other board members were probably thinking, another thing Neil wants us to do. And I think that's just typical of particularly bigger businesses. They're already busy. Everyone's already maxed. Everyone's already over allocated. And I think businesses initially thought AI was something else you have to add on top. And they didn't have the capacity. They didn't have the budgets. They didn't have the resource. They didn't have the brain space to sort of deal with it. But that has definitely shifted. I think through budget cycles as well, businesses are now into their next, annual budget, and they've probably thought, all right, we can't do anything this year, but we'll put something into the budget to start having a look at this next year. So we're seeing a shift, certainly as Ignite AI partners, we're seeing a shift from help us understand it and strategize to now actually we want to deliver some stuff. We're also seeing, post-COVID, I think COVID changed the game dramatically in terms of digital adoption. And there was a wave, I think, that has continued with that, and AI has then just kind of increased the steepness of that wave, which I think is important to reflect on. But there are so many kind of off-the-shelf products now in the market that I think businesses are confused. What's good, what's not, what's snake oil, what's not, what's hype versus what's got real benefit. And frankly, that's one of the reasons we exist, is to help businesses understand that. I can't keep up, and I run an AI business. If I can't keep up, how on earth are businesses and executives supposed to have half a chance of keeping up? They're the main differences, I think, at the moment.
And have we reached the point now where if you haven't adopted, or you aren't on that adoption journey of some form of AI technology to support your business, are we at that point now where you're at a competitive disadvantage if you're not doing it?
I believe so, yes. I mean, I'm going to give a consultant answer and say it depends, and it does depend. It's the same variables. It depends on the type of business you are, the size that you are, and the sector that you operate in. But I've been reading a lot recently, online particularly. There's some really valuable LinkedIn posts that I've read recently where there is this risk of divide, and we're going to get quite philosophical now, I think, but there's two aspects to this. One is from a business perspective, that there is a divide in terms of winners and losers, and those that haven't invested in data or understood the quality of their data, or even what data they have and how to use it, are now at a big disadvantage. They were already at a disadvantage, but the AI lens over the top of that just magnifies that disadvantage now, because if you want to leverage AI, data is a huge important factor to that. And if you've paid no attention to it, you are already behind. There is also a societal potential divide, I think, in future years of those of us who know how to use the tools to our advantage. There's an argument, an article I read online recently where they were arguing that there's a risk of a societal divide of the value of those individuals versus those that don't. And your personal value, whether that be, salary or, just value in general of how attractive you are to businesses and to industry in general, may actually depend on, are you making use of the tools that are available to you? So there is a risk there, but I'd say that risk is not a future risk. I say that risk is now. Yes.
Yeah. And from a technology hiring perspective, a lot of what I've been doing over the course of the last kind of 9 months since Dentro started has been around data, because businesses are realizing that their data is not quite near where it needs to be before they start on that journey. What are the most impactful ways that you've seen businesses implement AI, and what's been kind of the ROI on what they've done?
I mean, it is vast, so I'll try and get specific and give you some examples. But it goes back to that utility nature of artificial intelligence, on a general basis. It is being used and can be used absolutely everywhere. What we've seen, though, in the industry, particularly in retail, is that most businesses, especially last year, were going pretty much to the bottom line first. They were thinking, how can this help me to reduce cost or drive efficiency? Because we all know retail is tough. We all know the market hasn't been on retailer's side for some time now. So using AI to generate additional revenue, I think most businesses struggle to believe it because they've had digital transformation 5, 10, 15 years for 15 years now. And it all has a promise of this will increase sales and increase revenue. And the market is so variable that you can't just pin a business case to that. So lots of businesses have just been going straight to cost reduction or driving efficiencies because it's more in their control. And AI clearly through intelligent automation, things like chatbots, those sorts of technologies directly feed into that cost reduction and efficiency gain. However, we are seeing a bit of a shift now from just straight addressing cost through to things like personalization. AI gives you the opportunity for, I don't really like the phrase, but hyper personalization. So again, hyper personalization isn't new, but the tools that are now available, allow you to do things that businesses have never been able to do before, like sentiment analysis. So you can use AI to understand sentiment of customer contact. And if you have your data in the right place, then you can then translate that sentiment into a next best action for that customer of, okay, they've made contact about an order, but were they unhappy or not? If they were unhappy, then we need to recover that situation with that customer, and what are the offers that we can do or the actions that we can do to recover that situation. That context and sentiment is something that AI can do that most technologies haven't been able to do before. And I could talk forever, knowledge management, HR, transformations, operational excellence, are all areas that are being helped by AI.
Yeah. And would you advocate the starting point being that view of a bottom line to where's it going to have that immediate impact, or are you more of the opinion that you need to kind of take a broad view of what it can do in each different area?
Yeah, this is a really good question actually, because again, this doesn't help businesses by saying it can do everything, because they probably don't believe that, and quite rightly in some situations, but also that's businesses that are already busy, as we've already said, they like solutions that are targeted to a particular problem and do this, it will result in this. More of a binary concept. If you then say AI is magic, it's electricity, then it's just it's too hard to comprehend. So we do advocate for understanding AI, and we do a lot of work around that. Educate boards, educate senior leadership teams about what AI really means, and what, more importantly, probably what it doesn't mean. And we do assessment processes with businesses, but they're normally directed and targeted within a certain area. So I've struggled to come across a business that says, yes, look across every aspect and every area of our business and tell us where AI can help. What they usually do is say, well, we have a strategy already for increasing our revenue or reducing our costs or increasing customer satisfaction because that's a problem for us. Then that's a more targeted solution that we can say, okay, well, AI is like electricity, but we can look at how it can superpower your capabilities within that area with that direct result in mind. This is where most businesses, I think, trip themselves up, is they look at AI as a technology and a capability first, then they think about what's the problem I'm going to solve with it then.
Yeah.
You need to flip that directly the other way around, what we're trying to achieve, and then how can AI, like any other capability or tool, help us to achieve that.
Yeah. And the point you made just before that about understanding what it can do and understanding the capabilities of AI as a whole is really, really difficult. And there are a lot of misconceptions out there. You mentioned loads of good LinkedIn posts. I would imagine there's 1,000 for every 2 or 3 good ones that aren't great and possibly are slightly misleading. So what do you see as those, I guess, repeated misconceptions or the biggest misconceptions that people have around AI?
Yeah, there are a lot. I think this is directly correlated to the fact it isn't a bit of software you can plug in and it works. Then people's understanding is variable, and especially when you've got board teams and senior leadership teams who some aren't very digital anyway. So you're adding AI into the equation, saying now you've got to understand this. I mean, it's really difficult. So there are lots of misconceptions. I mean, the main ones that we come across is that AI is going to replace everyone. That then invokes fear and resistance in some cases. Certainly doesn't help adoption. And our comment is that's just, well, if you want it to, I'm sure it could, but I'm not sure a business would want that. And the augmentation of AI with human capabilities is the real sweet spot, where businesses can really win. I think some people think AI is as intelligent as a human, and it's just not. It's a tool. It still needs to be controlled and governed like any other bit of technology. I think probably the biggest one is that businesses and individuals think that it's just magic. It's just you just plug it in and it's just going to work. It's going to solve all of our problems. And I was reading an article actually on I think it was on LinkedIn this week about, and I think we did our own post about this from Ignite AI Partners about the failure of AI implementations. And I think that perception that AI is just plug and play and it's magic then feeds into why some AI implementations fail. Because it isn't fundamentally, and it's like anything that you do in business. Understand the problem you're trying to solve, understand how what you're doing will solve that, and then how are you going to measure it? And also from an adoption point of view, does everyone know what they're supposed to be doing with this? I think some businesses, we've heard horror stories in the press over the last few years, rush to do an AI implementation, don't consider the other things, and then they get a really bad result. I was reading about one implementation that cost millions and they only had 20% adoption within their business because they just didn't do the basics of telling people what it is and how to use it. And also that AI is only for big companies. One of the beauties about AI is how democratized it now is. Even if you're just one man or woman on their own trying to run a business, there are so many tools now that you can take advantage of that really increase your overall productivity and effectiveness. It really is democratized beyond anything I've seen before.
Yeah, and in terms of running an AI project or program of work, you touched on it. Then it's like implementing anything else in the business. Is that kind of how you, as Ignite AI partners, is that how you kind of run those projects and programs? It's still that kind of the same methodology, the same processes that need to be adhered to, in terms of benefits realization, in terms of, actually how you go about embedding new technology into the business. Same process, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know I'm making AI sound, it's utility and electricity and everything else, but when you boil it down into a change management project, actually AI is the lever that we're pulling to achieve a certain outcome. To achieve that certain outcome, you still need the basics in place in terms of business change. You still need a brief. What is it we're trying to do? You still need your requirements documented. You still need to test it properly. You still need to make sure it's developed in the right way, that you then can measure what you're trying to achieve. All of those things are exactly the same. We talk to businesses regularly about ensuring that those things are still done. I think some businesses are hoping that AI takes away some of that necessity, that you can just plug it in and it's going to work, and it's just not true. You still need all those things.
Yeah, and you touched earlier on about kind of people's fears around AI and the need for regulation and the need for governance. Where are we now in terms of compliance and regulations around AI, and what's potentially kind of coming down the track, and what route is that, or could that take?
Yeah, this is a big subject. Something that's being discussed a lot, I think. So regulations, I think, are struggling to catch up. Certainly, governments are rushing to catch up now, and if they're trying to keep up with the pace of AI development, then I think they're really going to struggle. Regulations are inevitable, and they are accelerating. The EU AI Act is, I think, the most comprehensive framework so far, although it's not enforceable yet. But classifying AI systems by risk level, is a good step forward. I think similar moves are underway in UK, US, Canada, and beyond, as I understand it. But we should expect a shift from sort of guidelines that we've been given so far to something more and legal, really, which I think is needed. But I do think the governing bodies, whether that be governments or otherwise, are struggling. I think they're going to continue to struggle. In the same way that, as I mentioned, I struggle to keep up with the rate of development, and this is my business, and how do other businesses keep up? I think governments are in a similar position. We're a member of the UK AI Trade Association, so we get to go to various meetings with government ministers about some of this stuff. And they are saying we need organisations like UK AI to help us understand what's really going on, so that would then influence the regulations and the policies that they publish. But I think we can expect a bit of a shift on this quite soon, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And look, not to get too political on these things, but are there different opinions in perhaps UK governments and perhaps a little bit more restrained, should we say, and looking for a little bit more heavier regulations, to somewhere like the US, where you've got Mr. Musk, amongst others, advocating AI and perhaps calling for less regulation? So do you see that kind of political landscape playing out in the AI regulations?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're seeing it already, not just in AI, across a variety of areas in terms of trade and economy in general. I think AI is going to follow a similar trend, unfortunately. However, if the UK has led the way in some of those conversations, I think alignment with the EU is clear and probably important. Like you say, the US holds a lot of the cards on this already, quite worryingly. So I don't know, to be honest. It's difficult to predict, and I don't want to get too doom mongery on it either.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Let's get back onto safer ground. The balance of AI, automation, and human input. What are you seeing as a kind of, the perfect is probably a little bit misnomer, but what's a good kind of balance? Where is the human interaction needed? And also, let's ask the question: should people be genuinely worried and concerned about AI taking more jobs? It's not going to take all jobs, but should we be concerned about it? And where's the sweet spot for automation and human interaction?
Yeah. It's a really good point, and something that's discussed a lot. My personal view is that we should look at AI as a technological advancement, like others that have happened in history, like the Industrial Revolution, like the invention of computers. Before calculators, we used to do mathematics in a more basic way. And you can, although I'm saying how powerful AI is, and it is, you could also look at it in terms of a tool. Why would you build a spreadsheet without using Excel? You just wouldn't. So if you look at it in that way, it's more about augmentation rather than replacement. There are statistics out there, that 90% of the global population will have to retrain in some way because of AI. And do I believe that? Probably, yeah. I mean, again, then it depends on where you sit in terms of that scale. Software developers are going to be really high up versus manual laborers or more skilled professions that do manual work. So it depends where you sit on that. However, someone asked me, will I get replaced by AI? And my response was, no, I don't think you will, but you might get replaced by someone who knows how to use AI, because they'll be more productive, probably. So there's a responsibility on everyone, I think, to understand that in terms of your own personal situation. But also there's a massive responsibility on education. And I was at one of the UKAI meetings actually in the House of Commons talking about training and education in general for the UK workforce. I think the title was "How do we get the UK workforce ready for AI?" And it was a really interesting discussion because we need to start in the very early stages of education, and we are, and it's becoming part of school curriculums now. That then gives the UK population every opportunity to embrace the technologies that are available and kind of get on that as quickly as possible. So it just becomes, my kids are 9, 10 and 13 and they're already using AI in various ways. So when they go into employment, then I imagine it would just be the same as using computers for me when I first started out, So it's difficult to sort of boil it down into saying, "Oh, just do this and it'll be fine," because clearly it's not the way. But I mean, we advise businesses on this regularly, and the human in the loop mindset needs to be one I think we establish quite forcefully, because the AI implementations which didn't go well, which I mentioned previously, were all because there wasn't a human in the loop. That they thought that AI could just do it all and just implement it and it will work, and clearly that's not the case. There has to be structured human oversight over anything like this that's implemented, especially into a business. One of the key questions I ask businesses is who's going to be responsible for this? And some businesses say, well, I don't know, it's this person and this person and this person. And my advice is,
AI will look after it.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. And where do where does the business who are contemplating AI, and where do they start? What's the kind of, how do I do this?
Yes. So if I were back in business and hadn't done anything at all and was thinking about what to do, I would urge boards and senior leadership teams to really collaborate and discuss this together. Some of the issues and challenges that I see are because it's parochial within a business that the board say, oh, it's the CIO's job to look at AI. I can't stress enough how that is it could work, I guess, but it's not the best way of taking advantage of this. It's because of that utility nature of AI. It needs to be kind of embraced and understood by everyone to varying levels, probably, but there has to be that collaboration from a leadership perspective, and then everyone has to kind of sign up and get behind whatever it is that you're trying to do. I would advise businesses to start small, but also plan for scale and build in a smart way. I think another issue for businesses is they look at this in its entirety and think this is too big, and we don't have the budgets, we don't have the manpower, and so on. But there are very small things that you can do to prove concepts and to get value quite quickly. The other advantage of AI is how rapidly it can be developed and implemented. It is different, and you're not doing an ERP replacement by implementing some generative AI. It can be done quite quickly in a contained way, and then you build from there. I'd really urge businesses to think of it in that way. We can't talk about AI, not talk about data. You have to focus on data. Is your data in the condition it needs to be in, clean, connected, accessible, and so on? And if you're not sure, then I think that's probably a good place to start. Not exclusively, and you can start that while also looking at potential AI implementations. But it has to be all around the right outcome, ultimately. What are we trying to achieve as a business? And then how can AI help us get there? But if you are a leader and you're wondering how ready your business is for AI, then one of the places you can start, and the best place I think, is our AI readiness assessment. So we've developed a quick self-assessment because we're aware that we don't get the opportunities to go and speak face to face to every business out there, and we wanted to provide a quick way of businesses doing this for themselves. So the assessment should help you to understand whether you have the right data, ask you questions around leadership and capabilities that all feed into a successful AI journey. So if anyone wants to go to ai.igniteaipartners.com/assessment, I think the link might be somewhere around in this podcast as well.
We'll get it. We'll get a link embedded in.
Yeah, and if you take the assessment, then you'll then get a personalised report with the details. So hopefully that will help people as well.
Yeah, and it's just certainly over the last 12 months, every CIO, every tech leader that I've spoken to, and in fact, when you came and spoke at the event that we hosted at the back end of last year, the conversation was almost not quite exclusively, but was really centered around AI and just people not knowing where to start. So I think that kind of assessment is going to help people at least understand where it could add value and how ready they might be for it. So look, last question from me, Neil, and hopefully a little bit more on the lighter side of things. What's the weirdest AI related prediction or outlook that you have or that you've heard?
The weirdest. Oh, I don't know about the weirdest. I mean, someone asked me this question a while ago actually, and said, what will AI be doing, or what will the world be like in 5 years? And my answer was not. I mean, considering where we've come from over the last couple of years and what's happening today, what the technology can do today, I can't predict 5 years. But I mean, I'm already seeing some incredible things, that AI can do. When you combine AI with things like robotics, synthetic biology, and things like that, then that's where you get the weirdest and the scariest things, I think. But I mean, my prediction in the very near future is that AI, it won't just write your emails like people are using it for today. It'll probably help you negotiate your next pay rise. It'll book your holiday, probably based on your stress levels and your budgets that it knows anyway. It'll warn you before you say something stupid in a meeting. I could probably do that. So I think it will be this personal assistant and colleague that people probably don't know that they need. But I think that's kind of where it's going, at least from an individual perspective. And again, AI can be everywhere in business and in personal lives and so on. But I can see a point in the very near future where your personal AI assistant, whether that be Alexa, Google Assistant, or the home devices, they'll be telling you what's going on in your life. Well, I've booked your haircut because I know you need one, and on the day you need your car MOT, so we've already booked an appointment at the garage, which is just around the corner from where you're getting your haircut, so that's fine. And by the way, you need some tomatoes, so they're on order, they're going to arrive tomorrow. That I think that's probably the most. That's not very wild, I guess, but I can see that happening in the not too distant future.
My diary management is absolutely shocking, so I'm here for that. Yeah. Neil, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much for taking the time to chat on the Dentro Talent Podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.